Hi everyone, my name is Akurede Adenike. You are highly welcome to my channel. In this tutorial today, I would like to teach you how to draft this beautiful shoulder princess dart bustier dress with shoulder flare showing on the screen. Now let's get into it. This is the paper I'm using for the tutorial today, and this is my shoulder line, my center front, because I'm drafting the front first. So from my shoulder line, I'm going to measure out my bust point, which is 10 inches, and it's a. From my shoulder to my under bust, from my shoulder to my waistline, from my shoulder to my hip line, and from my shoulder to the full length of my dress, which is 40 inches. So I have 40 inches on this paper, exactly 40 inches. I'm going to repeat the same thing here, just for me to have a straight lines. To have straight lines. After measuring, I'm going to connect all the points to have straight lines. Now I'm going to label all the lines now. My bust point line, my under bust line, my waistline, my hip line, and the full length of my dress, which is at the down part of the paper. So from my center front here on the shoulder line, I'm going to measure out my neck width of 3.5 and my neck depth of 4 inches. I'm going to connect with the curved side of my roller just like this. And from my center front as well, I'm going to measure out half of my shoulder measurement, which is 7.5 inches, because my shoulder is 15 inches. I'm coming down from there by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and from this point I'm going to come down by 8 inches, which is the half of my round armhole measurement. So from here to here, now I'm going to measure what is there, which is 9 inches altogether, and I'm repeating the same thing here, just for me to draw out my chest line. Making a straight line, my chest line. And for me to draw out my armhole measurement, what is on my shoulder line, I'm going to repeat it here on my chest line to make it straight. I'm connecting from here to here now. So this is my armhole line. My shoulder slope, connecting from my neck width to my shoulder slope. Now I'm going to measure out my nipple to nipple measurement, half of it, on my bust point, which is 3.5 inches. On my hip line, I'm doing the same thing till I get to the bottom of my dress. After measuring, I'm going to connect all the points from here to here and from here to here to get a straight line. So on my on my bust point line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch like this. And on my under bust line, I'm going to come in by 1 inch on both sides. I'm doing the same thing on my waistline, 1 inch on both sides. On my hip line, I'm doing the same thing till I get to the bottom of my dress. So I'm going to connect all the points together till I get to the bottom of my dress, just like this. From my under bust line. So here now, I'm connecting with the curved side of my roller from here to here and from here to here, just like this. I'm blending the sharp edges. Now for me to draw out my shoulder princess dart, I'm going to measure what I have on my shoulder slope and divide it by 2. So I'm going to connect from here to my bust point line, just like this. So on both sides, I'm going to measure 1 inch inward. And I'm connecting from here to here and from here to here, just like this. Now after connecting, I'm going to cut it out. After cutting, this is what I have. So I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to use my masking tape to hold it together for me to take the necessary measurements. I'm done using my masking tape to tape it together. This is what I have after doing that. So I'm going to take all the necessary measurements now for me to cut it out finally. So for me to draw out my new shoulder slope, I'm going to measure half of my shoulder measurement from my center front, which is 7.5 inches, and it's here. So from there, I'm coming down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. So I'm going to draw out my shoulder slope from my neckline, just like this. This is my new shoulder slope now. And to draw out my new armhole line, I'm going to measure half of my shoulder measurement on my chest line from the center front, just like this, which is 7.5 inches, and it's here. So I'm connecting from here to here now for my new armhole line. So this is my new armhole line now. For me to draw out my armhole curve, I'm going to divide what I have here by 2. And from that point, I'm coming in by 0.75, which is 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to connect slantly to meet this point from my shoulder slope. So after doing that, I'm going to use the curved side of my ruler to connect from this point till I reach my chest line. I'm trying to place 1/4 of my bust on my chest line before I draw out my armhole curve with the curved side of my ruler, just like this. Now this is my armhole curve now, as you can see. So I'm placing 1/4 of my bust on my chest line, 1/4 of my waist on my waistline, and 1/4 of my hip on my hip line. So on the bottom of my dress, I'm going to place 1/4 of my hip there, but I'm going to deduct 1 inch from it to create a kind of pencil shape on the bottom of my dress. 1/4 of my hip is 10 inches. I'll just deduct 1 inch from there. That will give me 9 inches. So I'm connecting all the points now. After connecting, this is what I have, and I'm going to cut it out. Now I'm done cutting, as you can see. So I'm going to remove the masking tape for you to see how it looks like. Here is it now. This is my side front and this is my center front. I'm going to write it on it. I'm cutting 2 pieces of the side front and I'm cutting the center front on fold. So I'm going to move on to the back part now, putting this one aside. Here is another paper for the back part. So let me just cross check whether the paper can be enough. It will be enough for the drafting I'm making. So I'm starting by measuring out my zipper allowance of 1.5 inch from my shoulder to the bottom of my paper. So I'm going to connect the points now. So here is my zipper allowance. I'm going to write it on it. So from my shoulder line, I'm going to measure out my waistline, which is here, and my hip line, which is here as well, until the bottom of my dress, which is 40 inches. So from my center front, I'm going to measure half of my shoulder measurement. From there as well, I'm going to measure out my width, my neck width, and from my shoulder line, I'm measuring my neck depth, which is 1 inch. I'm going to connect my neckline with the cuff side of my roller just like this. Now I'm going to draw out straight lines on the point I made earlier. Let me just extend the lines before I label them. This is my hip line and this is my waistline. So from this point now, I'm going to measure 1 inch downward for my shoulder slope. And from this point, I'm going to measure half of my round armhole for me to draw out my chest line. So what I have here all together, I'm going to repeat it here for me to draw out my chest line. So what I have on my shoulder measurements, I'm going to repeat it here. Now I'm going to draw out my chest line, connecting the points. I'm going to connect straight like this for me to draw out my armhole line. And I'm connecting from my neckline to this point for my shoulder slope. So to draw out my armhole curve, I will just place my roller like this and draw it out. Armhole curve for the back part, as you can see. So I'm going to draw out my nipple to nipple measurement from my center back on my chest line till I get to the bottom of my dress, just like this. And I'm going to connect all the points to form a straight line. So after connecting, I'm going to measure ½ inch on both sides on my waistline. I'm going to measure 1 inch from my chest line downward, and I'm going to connect slantly just like this on both sides. I'm going to measure ½ inch on both sides on the bottom of my dress and connect from my waist straight down on both sides, just like this, just to make it straight. So after connecting these points, to create my princess dart for my shoulder princess dart for the back part, I'm going to measure what I have on my shoulder slope and measure it, and divide it into 2. Connect from here to here now, just like this. So I'm going to blend the sharp edge. After doing that, I'm going to place all the necessary measurements. On my chest line, I'm going to input 1/4 of my bust there. On my waistline, I'm inputting 1/4 of my waist. And on my hip line, I'm going to do the same thing. Place 1/4 of my hip there. But on the bottom of my dress, I'm going to deduct 1 inch from the 1/4 of my hip, just to make it pencil. To create a kind of pencil shape on the bottom, I'm going to connect all the points now, just like this. So after connecting, I'll just cut it out. After cutting, this is what I have. This is my back part now. I'm going to write it on it, my side back. I'm cutting 2 pieces of this and 2 pieces of the center back as well. Now, lest I forget, to avoid any folding on the center back, I'm going to measure ½ inch inward on my waistline, just like this. Let me extend this line. So I'm doing the same thing here. Measure ½ inch inward, just for me to avoid any folding on the back part. So I'm connecting to my chest line, and I'm going to connect it to my waist, to my hip line as well from my waistline. So let me extend this line too, just for you guys to understand. I'm going to connect from my waist to my chest line, from my waist to my hip line on this second part too, just like this. Blend the sharp edge if there is any. I'm going to cut it out. So after cutting, this is what I have for the back part. This is both front and back. Here is where I'm stopping for today, guys. If my tutorial has been helpful to you, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel to support my channel. If you have any question pertaining to cutting and sewing, you can join me on my Facebook group, Details to Sewing, created by Akorede Adenike. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Akorede Adenike. Please show some love by liking and following my page on Facebook at Akorede Adenike Sewing Tutorial. Till I see you in my next video, guys. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye bye.